All right. Hello, all. Let's just got a quick little sound check here, making sure that everything's good. Looks like we got people tuning in from all over the place, all over the world, not just the country. So, welcome. Today is our weekly live stream that we've been pretty consistent about doing, I think, for the last several weeks. And today is a particularly special live stream in that we're going to be announcing the winner of the pedalboard giveaway. And we've been doing this giveaway all of the month of March. And if you weren't familiar with the giveaway, we're essentially doing a dream pedalboard for somebody. So we're taking whatever effects it is that they use, all of the gear that they have, and we're going to assemble it into a professional level pedalboard for them. And we're getting a power supply provided courtesy of TrueTone. We're getting all of the cables and plugs and all of the materials to build the board from Best-tronics. And then we're going to use one of our Vertex pedal boards, which I'll be donating. And then I'm going to put the whole thing together for them exactly the way that they want. And we're going to be using a Goodwood interfacer box as the buffered interface for the whole system. And just making it right, making it perfect, and making it exactly the way that they want it. If that's wet, dry, wet, or 4-cable method, or stereo, whatever it is, we're going to build it for them exactly the way that we want, or exactly the way that we would do it in the way that they want. And we had almost 7,000 people enter, and there was up to 14 entry points that people could get from doing it. And we had a lot of people that got into it. So I really appreciate everybody that was a part of it. And we will announce the winner at the end. But we also have some really great prizes in the meantime, because as you may know, if you've been part of the community and you've been watching the live streams, we've been doing giveaways pretty regularly. And we are going to be doing 5 smaller giveaways, not for full pedal boards. And so we're going to do a giveaway in about every 8 minutes or so. And so I've put a giveaway clock up here in the corner. And when this gets to 0, we'll do some giveaways, and I have lots of cool stuff. Our friends from Diadario have given us a bunch of really cool stuff. We have things like capos. We have things like 3-packs and 5-packs of NYXL strings. We have 9s and 10s. We have enough picks to choke a small horse. We have we have all sorts of things. It just keeps coming. We have string winders. We have all sorts of really cool stuff. So we're going to be giving away a bunch of this stuff. Every 8 minutes we're going to do a giveaway, and it's going to be based on some of the information that we talked about in our previous week's video. So our previous week's video, if you didn't watch it, or it was technically this week, so 3 days ago video, we did a video about understanding effects loops. And this was a super cool video where we talked about all the things that are related to effects loops. And I kind of looked at all of the big, and I'll start the giveaway clock now. I talked about all the big stuff that's regarding effects loops, and I looked at all of the videos that were, kind of the big videos that people might have watched if they were searching for effects loops, and tried to look at where we could add in some information that maybe wasn't there. And I think that there was a lot of information that wasn't there, kind of regarding the technical perspective about buffering and understanding sort of some of the theoretical differences. And so the video's been out. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend that you check it out. And so today we're going to be asking questions every 8 minutes that involve some of the topics that were covered throughout the course of that particular video. So I'm going to ask those questions, and if you answer that question correctly, you'll get a chance to win one of these items. And I think Mejia sent me those questions already. We already came up with them, but I actually don't have them, Mejia. So if you want to send those questions to me, I'll get those, but we still have 7 minutes for him to come up with that. So Mejia is going to be managing the chat here, and he's going to be posting some of the questions that come up. And of course, if you have questions throughout any of this, you're always welcome to put those. Mejia will kind of highlight them, so you might see him repost some of the questions, and it's just so it's easier for me to find them if there's a bunch of questions coming in sequence. I want to make sure that we get to everything, and then if you want to do a super chat or anything like that, we will do our best to prioritize that. I know sometimes I miss them, So I'm sorry to anybody that had put up a super chat that I didn't get to. But you can always put the question again, and I will do my best to get to it, or you can put it in the comment section when the video is over. So let's talk about effects loops and some of the common things that we see when we're talking about effects loops. So let's see. We talked about a couple of different things. So one of the key distinctions that we talked about is the standard types of effects loops. So ordinarily you see two types. One's called a serial effects loop, and that's like what almost every effects loop that you would presumably see on the market is. And that basically just means all your pedals are in sequence between the preamp and the power amp. So just quick definition, if you didn't watch the video, you have no idea what I'm talking about. An effects loop is ostensibly an insert point between the preamp section of the amplifier and the power amp section of the amplifier. So you can insert, typically time-based effects, delay and reverb I think work best there, in that position so that they're not subject to the distortion of the preamps. They're coming after that. And so that you're, and essentially we talked about kind of what that does, if we're talking about formats that we understand. So let's just quickly look at that real quick. So ordinarily, if we're talking about a clean amp that we're running overdrive pedals into, that's kind of like the bottom example. So follow the bottom example for me. On the right side, we have the guitar that comes into the overdrive device. Here we're just using the TrueTone, but this could be any overdrive device. Then that would go into delay. We have the DM2. Then it would go into reverb, and then it would go into the clean amp. Okay, and that's the signal path that we'd ordinarily use if the pedals are producing the distortion. The pedals would go before the time-based effects. If you're using an amplifier that's dirty, where the preamp is being distorted, the guitar would go into this distorted preamp, and then we would use the effects loop, because that would essentially be the same as putting your wet effects after an overdrive pedal like you see in the bottom example. So the bottom and the top example are close sonically in how they design the signal path. It just depends on whether the pedal is producing the distortion or the amplifier is producing the distortion. If the amp is producing the distortion, then you want to use the effects loop. If the pedals are producing the distortion, there's not going to be any benefit to using the effects loop. So this is kind of just a rough diagram that we gave to show what that looks like. And if you were to, say, run all of your wet effects in front of a distorted amp, then it would essentially look like this, which would kind of be the uncool way to do it, or I should say the less traditional way. So if you follow me on the bottom diagram, the one all the way on the bottom, you see guitar would go into delay, would go into reverb, and then would go into overdrive. That would be sort of bizarre. We wouldn't ordinarily see that particular signal path if you were going into a clean amp, because you wouldn't want to distort the repeats of the delay and reverb. Equally, that would be the same if you look at the top example as putting a guitar into delay, into reverb in front of a dirty amp. These two signal paths, in terms of how they affect the sound, are roughly the same. It's just one has the pedal that's creating the distortion, and the other has the amplifier that's creating the distortion. We wouldn't want to do that. This is why it is important to use the method that I showed on top. This way that your distortion devices aren't distorting the repeats of the delay and the reverb. So that's just kind of a quick understanding of what those things mean when we're talking about effects loop. The other thing we talked about was serial versus parallel, and again, serial is just one into the next. So here was my example of a serial effects loop where you just have, the send goes into the delay goes in the reverb hopefully goes into a buffer, or you have a buffered return or something like that if you have an active effects loop. And then those are just one into the next and then the next. That's different from a parallel loop where you have the dry signal from the preamp section, which is mixed in with the wet effects. And these wet effects typically need to be kill dry and set to 100% wet, because you're using those with full effect, return only, and then you're using the mix knob. Hopefully there's a mix knob for this. Some of the amplifiers actually don't have a mix knob, but you're essentially mixing it back in with the dry signal, and that's typically some version of that. Some of them don't have pots for this. Some of them are fixed, or some of them might have some sort of toggle or something like that to approximate a mix, or they're determining that you're going to use some of the dry signal in the actual delay device. But ordinarily, you would put these at 100% wet, and then you would mix it with the dry signal. And this would kind of be more like what you would see in terms of adding in wet effects in a studio, where it's done in parallel, by way of the mix bus. So those are the kind of the two principal types. But with that in mind, I want to prep here. I need to download some of Mejia's questions because they're in different places here than I would ordinarily do it, how I would ordinarily put them. Let me just download this one here because we're coming up on a minute, and I want to do our very first giveaway question. Let's take a look. All right. We got to come up in a minute. Let's take a question before we do our very first question for giveaway. And I'll tell you what, I'll let people choose. They can tell Mejia what they want because we have so many great things here. And the other thing I forgot to mention is we also have some TrueTone milliamp readers, which I use all the time if I'm trying to determine the current of some of the devices. So let's see. We're going to take this one question, then we'll do our first giveaway. So the first question is, it says, set me straight on this. Do you need an output buffer if you're going into an amp modeler like an ACS1 or an Iridium? I think the ACS1 is the Walrus version. So if you're going out of that and it's just going into a mixer or your interface, then no. Those typically are already low impedance at that point. I think the Strymon one's around 100 ohms. I don't know what the Walrus one is, but I can't imagine it'd be more than 500 ohms at the worst. So those you probably will be okay, because again, those are supposed to be the amplifier. Hopefully those have kind of a rough amplifier input impedance somewhere around 1 meg. But no, in those cases you wouldn't. But if you ever wanted to go cord it into an amp, you may consider having one. So let's go to our first question. And again, the way that the questions work here is, in essence, what I do is I recite the question, bring it up on the screen, and the first person to answer this question correctly in the comments is going to get to win the prize of their choice. So we have, again, a bunch of different things. We have string winders, I have capos, I have 3 packs of 10s, I have 3 packs of 9s. I have, let's see, picks. Let's not give away picks. That's uncool. I'll just throw in a set of picks for each person that wins today so they can double up. Or we have the milliamp readers from TrueTone. So just let us know what you want, and we will get you that thing. And so in anything, it's dealer's choice today. You get to pick your prize. We have lots of cool stuff today from Diodario and TrueTone. So first question, I'll put it up on the screen. First person to answer correctly in the comments wins. Mejia will notify us of who that person is. The first question is, what are the 2 types of effects loops found in amplifiers? This should be really easy because we literally just talked about it. What are the 2 types of effects loops commonly found in amplifiers? First person to put that in wins. Put that in the comment section so that you can win. Everybody wins. And Mejia will let me know who that winner is. Everybody's a winner. It looks like Roberto Villegas won. Congratulations to Roberto. And just email Mejia. He's going to put his email there in the description. It's mejia@vertexeffects.com. And Mejia will let you know what he needs from you. Typically, it's just going to be things like your name, your address, your phone number, your email, and we'll get this stuff to you and let him know what you want, so that way he gets to you. We'll throw in a set of picks with anybody who wins today. I'm going to restart the clock here. And in another 8 minutes, we'll give away another item, and at the end, we'll do the big giveaway where we announce who the pedalboard winner is live. Let's go to some more questions here. We got that set up for Jack Thompson. Here's another one from Total Evo 7. Hey, man, to elaborate, will the effects loop be buffered if I had a 100 ohm send and a 1 meg return? Well, if that's what it was inside the amp, yes. If that's off in the pedal board, it's not going to help you that much. And that was one of the questions that came up a lot, where people said, well, what if I just built one of the buffer DIY boxes that you showed on the channel? Would that just work and suffice as a buffer? And the answer is no for the effects loop, because the buffer needs to be in the amp, or as close to the amp as possible on the send, to then send it down to all the effects, because it doesn't really do much good if you've already run a 20 or 30 foot cable and then you throw the buffer there, right? It's still going to see all that capacitance. So that's why things like the clinulator are really cool. You just have to put them as close to the amplifier as possible. I saw a rig build recently that a friend of mine did, who's kind of, doing this just for fun as an amateur for a friend, and he put the clinulator on the guy's pedal board, and I was like, it can't work there because it needs to be as close to the amp as possible. If you're feeding a 20-foot cable back to the board, you're already going to have so much loss at that point. You can't unscramble the scrambled egg. You need to have that clinulator or the FX loop buffer as close to the actual send as possible. So that's why, like on all those old Dumbulators, when you see the Dumble FX loops with Dumbles, they're almost always racked with the amp or on top of the amp, because they need really short cables that are connecting those passive loops to the active loop. And then the active loop can have longer cables that go to the pedal board or whatever, but just to connect into it, it needs to be as close and as short as possible. So I think that answers your question, but if it didn't, then let me know in the comments. Here's another one from Angel or Angel. Need help. I have a custom Vibrolux reverb amp, and on both channels the bass knob stopped working. Just the bass knob. Well, I think on, let's see, on those, okay, they're not shared bass knobs because it's two channels. You have the vibrato and the normal. Well, if the bass knob is not working, I would say take it to a technician. It's hard to sort of estimate what the issue might be, or to guess what the issue might be, if I'm not like seeing the amp. And it's weird though that both of them would be like that. Is this a reissue? I guess it's a custom Vibro. I think it's a reissue, so it's all on a PC board. Yeah, I don't have anything obvious that's coming to mind thinking about it, so I don't know that I can give you a good answer other than take it to a technician and don't get into it yourself, because you don't want to get electrocuted. So take it to a technician is my first recommendation. There's nothing that comes to mind that I could tell you like, oh yeah, that's it, both bass knobs don't work, it must be X. There's nothing like that. I've been trying to find a volume pedal. This is from a mystery. Actually, no, I see it's from James Goodwin. It's from James Goodwin. Okay, I thought it was a mystery person. So I've been trying to find a volume pedal that has a smooth taper for fade-ins and swells, but all of them that I try seem to have most of the effect in a very small part. Well, I don't. And then you say active or passive question. Well, I don't think that has anything to do with what you're saying. It being active or passive doesn't necessarily have any relationship to the taper. And some of the volume pedals have a taper where more of the control is in the middle of the taper. And the presumption from the manufacturers, people like Boss's volume pedals like this. It doesn't do a lot in the start. It does a lot in the middle, and then doesn't do very much at the end. And the reason for that is that they presume that most of the action of the volume pedal is going to be in the middle, so they give the maximum amount of control and sort of that sweet spot. And then that they know that probably toward the end or the beginning, those are more fine. Those aren't so, those are more fine tuning. They're not really big jumps. And so they kind of arrange the pot so that it reflects that. I would say one that's more even from start to finish is the Ernie Ball volume pedals. So like the EBVP Juniors. Those are pretty smooth across the board. The Dunlops are also pretty smooth across the board. All those are passive. If you wanted to go with an active one, I think the Lely is really good. But I would say try the taper, and luckily these are pretty common, except for the Lely. They're pretty common ones that you could go to a Guitar Center or someplace and try it out and see if you even like the taper, because it doesn't have anything to do with it being active or passive. It has to do with the actual taper of the potentiometer. It sounds like that's what you're responding to. Let's see. All right. This one is Hi Mason. On your personal pedal board, do you find the two notes cab M running direct is noisy? I have one and it's unusable. Well, there's a ground lift on it, which you could try. And I would also say, well, what are you trying it into? You know, because sometimes you're going into these funky mixers that other people have that, you know, that are problematic to begin with, or they've got it on phantom power, or all sorts of weird stuff can just happen where if it's out of your control. So I would say if you're using the same setup and you're using another product that can go direct like that, and you're like, well, it has no product or it has no problem with product A, but as soon as I involve product B, which is the two notes cab M, then there's a problem. I've never had a problem with noise with it at all. But I would say use the ground lift thing as well and see if that resolves the problem. If you're in control of all the other sort of extraneous gear that adds up to you know, whatever your system ordinarily is, or if this was sort of a system that you were using and that you don't usually use and that you're not as familiar with, and so you don't know all the ins and outs of it. I don't have that problem at all, and I've used it a lot. So I think it may be something specific to the system that you used, or you didn't use the ground lift option. Let's see. All right. I use a ASC1, and it doesn't get very dirty with gain. Would it be okay to run wet into that or after? Well, I think that the amps that it's emulating, as I recall, I think it's like a Marshall, a Vox, and a Fender. None of those are really dirty amps. I think the Marshall is supposed to be a Plexi. And despite what people think, a Plexi, there's two of them right back there. They're not dirty amps. They're clean AF, like real clean. They're 100 watt, or the top one's 100 watt, and the bottom one's a 50 watt. They're really clean amps. They're not dirty. So those would be fine with distortion running into them, no problem. But we got another giveaway coming up in 7 seconds, so let's just prep for that real quickly. So again, just want to remind people of the rules. So the rules are, I say the question, and when I'm saying the question, you're going to determine, let me just make sure I'm in the right place here to bring up these questions. All right, so I'm gonna recite the question. In the recitation of the question, you're going to then look it over, make sure that you know what's what. You're going to answer that question in the comments. The first person to answer the question correctly in the comments is going to win whatever item they want. Again, we got a bunch of cool stuff from Diodario. It's just boxes full of stuff from Diodario. We got strings, capos, string winders. We have 9s, we have 10s, we have TrueTone milliamp readers. We have all sorts of really cool stuff. You can tell Mahia which one of those things that you want, and we'll include that. And I'm going to throw in a set of free picks as well. And shout out to Devin at Diodario for sponsoring this, and to our good buddies over at TrueTone with the milliamp readers. So thank you to all of them. But let's go to question 2. First person to answer it wins whatever they want. Here it is. Question number 2 is, name one product that will turn a passive effects loop into an active effects loop. We talked about a couple of them in the video, and I even put more in the description. So name one product that will take a passive effects loop and turn it into an active effects loop. This is one of the things that we covered in the video. If you watched the video, this should be easy. Should be an easy check for understanding. A product that will turn a passive into an active. Andrew Luddy got this one. So an answer to this could have been the Kleinulator. That's probably, I think, the best one. We even talked about it a little bit during the stream. Another great one, you could use the Vertex Boost, actually, will turn an active loop into a passive loop, because we have that expression jack that makes another set of send and returns. Another cool one that actually I didn't talk about in the video, and I totally spaced on it, and it's an excellent one, and it's not solid state, it's tube, is by Fuchs. And I couldn't find them for sale anywhere, but I know that he made it, and we listed it, and it's great. I've used them before. I don't know if he doesn't manufacture them anymore, or what happened, or if it just, you know, it's people are tricky with effects loops. I think it's a 4-letter word to some, especially the vintage amp community. But man, they can be so useful in a lot of situations, as we showed in the serial effects loop diagram, and in the traditional wiring. It's let's see, what am I doing wrong? Okay, here it is. When we're doing this traditional wiring, this is so valuable in that you're able to still maintain the distortion sound and not have that show up in your delay repeats. So it's a valuable thing if you have a dirty amp or a multi-channel amp that's producing distortion. Not so useful if you're going to be using a clean amp, but I think that they're all cool. They're all cool things. So I'm going to start the giveaway clock again. We're going to be doing another giveaway. And we're just going to keep going until we reach the end and we do our pedalboard grand finale giveaway. We're going to get to find out who the winner of that is. But let's keep going with some more questions, maybe some more effects loop questions. Let's see. This is from Hayner. I use a DSM simplifier. This is got to be the 0-watt amplifier crowd today. We get a lot of those. That's cool though. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying I noticed that there's more than usual of people that are using these pedalboard based amps. As a simulator, do you have a design for a buffer that will bypass an amp simulator if you want to plug in front of an actual amp? Well, I don't have one that will bypass, but the reality is that, well, if you're going balanced out of this thing, because I think that this has a balanced output, as I recall. I don't think it's just a 1/4 inch. But let's consult. Let's consult Dr. Google here, and we'll just look. DSM simplifier. Okay, let's see. What is it? Is it truly balanced out? Some of these use XLR, but are still single-ended. All right. Yeah, so what I would do with this, let me see how they're doing it. Okay. Oh, it looks like they have a through. They have an effects through on this thing. So you could go balanced or unbalanced, it looks like. I would just set up, I would use the unbalanced side if you're going to go into the mixer. And then I would just throw, if I don't know what the output impedance is of the throughs, maybe it is totally just input straight to the outputs, I don't know. But if it's not an output impedance that you like, that could go straight into an amp, then you could just throw a buffer on each one of those through outputs that seem to just be parallel off the input, or that's at least how it looks at first glance. So if you know what that output impedance is and it's around 100 ohms, and I wouldn't say that there's probably much of a need for you to use separate buffers, but let me know. Let me know, and I'll go down the rabbit hole with you. Angus Potter, Irwin, what makes the SUR reactive load so special? I do have a SUR reactive load actually right here. I think it is really good. It sounds good for Celestion speakers in particular. I think it sounds really good at nailing that sound. Even just with the stock onboard IRs, it sounds pretty good. The other one that I think is really good that I would say is like equal to this one is the Fryette version. And that's also a similar type of setup where it's got the load and the reactive load, and then it's got the ability to add in IRs, and he's got his own preloaded IRs, but then you can add in your own IRs the same way as the SUR. I think both of them are really good units. The one thing I like about the Fryette version, however, is that you can use it at multiple impedances, whereas the SUR can only be operable at 8 ohms. So I actually have both, because like my Vox AC30, if I want to rock out at night and my wife is sleeping or working or whatever it is that she's doing that is not a conducive environment to noise, I'll use that, and it's fantastic, and it's great because my Vox is 16 ohm, and then I have some old Fenders here that are 4 ohm, so I can use that with them. If I mean, you could use the Sur with a 4 ohm, it would be okay, but I want to ideally give them the impedance that they like to see. So I think that they're both great. I highly recommend the Fryette. I highly recommend the Sur. I think both are very good. All right, let's see. Next question. Have you ever built a rig with a Bogner amp? I have a Shiva, and it has a tube buffered effects loop. Unfortunately, it seems that the loop is located between channel 1 and channel 2. Using a 4-cable method, strange things happen. Well, I'm presuming that channel 1 is the clean amp, or there's the clean channel, and 2 is the dirty channel. But I would presume that they're both using the same preamp, or like I don't know that I don't know how they're doing. I don't know the ins and outs of the Shiva, but I have worked with several rigs, mostly, well, I guess only Ecstasies is the only ones that I've worked with. I haven't worked with a Shiva. Actually, I guess that's not true. I've worked with the Helios. And because what does Justin Derrico have? Justin Derrico has a Shiva too. So yeah, I guess I have done a Shiva. I don't think that it's an issue with the 4-cable method. It may be that there's an issue with the loop or the pedals that you're using in the loop. And tube buffered isn't bad. I mentioned in the video that I think solid state is preferable in an effects loop because it's more linear and the tube is going to have a lot of color to it. And it's going to add, having the gain stage for the tube, it can also be a little noisier sometimes. But I wouldn't say that there's anything inherent about the Bogner loop that's going to be problematic. I wonder if one of the problems that you're having is that the effects are not optimized for the impedance of the loop or the level of the loop. We talked about in the video that a lot of people, their loop will be coming out at +4, and the pedals that you're using are at -20. And so it's just slamming the crap out of them when it gets hit with line level. If there isn't any sort of attenuation or resistors to do that on the send, or it's not a buffered loop with the volume control, it can be really hard to use those there. So I wonder if that might be something you're experiencing. But maybe tell me a little bit more about what are the strange things, because it's hard for me to know what is strange. So let me know on that. Maybe we can get back to that. Let's see. I'm going through all the series parallel. There's a lot of them. Good work. Good work. So many good answers here. I'm so glad that people are getting into it. All right. This is from Roberto. Oh, that's Mejia asking for Roberto to send his emails. So Roberto, do that. Don't listen to me. Are you familiar with the Orange Terror stamp? If so, do you think there would be a noticeable amount of tone suck or capacitance if it's effects loop with the amp being on the pedal board? Well, I don't know. Let's see. So you got the amp. Okay, there's the amp. Would there be a noticeable amount of tone suck or capacitance if its effects loop with the amp is being on the pedal board? Well, if the effects are on the pedal board, probably. If it's a passive loop, you'll probably have a real problem if you're trying to drive a 20-foot cable that's all passive. I'm not understanding completely if you're saying the amp is on the pedal board or if you're running the amp effects loop out to the pedal board. If it's running out to the pedal board, tone suck, yes, definitely. If it's on the pedal board, probably not, because those would be short cables. Let's see. You're so tan and handsome. What's your secret? Well, I'm going to tell my wife. So I think that this might be validating. And just on that, I'm going to have a sip of water here in my Floridian mug. Well, I was in Mammoth last week, and it was sunny out there, but that's not usually what I hear on YouTube. Everybody either tells me I've been called two people repeatedly, Jack Black and Geraldo Rivera. I get in the comment section. Somebody almost every single video has told me that I look like one of those people. So that's probably the most flattering comment I've gotten. So thank you, EJ. I will communicate that to my wife. Oh, and we're at 0 seconds. So we got to do another giveaway unless I forgot to start it. Maybe I did, but let's do another giveaway anyway. So the way that the giveaway is going to work, if you're new, we're going to say a question. It's going to come up on the screen. If you answer this question correctly and are the first person to answer it correctly, you will win a free gift giveaway from us from D'Addario and TrueTone. We got lots of cool stuff. We have these fancy string winders. We have 3 packs of NYXLs. We have capos. We have TrueTone milliamp readers. Whatever you want, you're going to get. I'll throw in a free set of picks to go along with any of these. And you just tell us what you want, and we'll make it happen. Mejia will make it happen. This is question number 3. First person to answer it correctly gets it. Here it is. What are the typical levels we see in effects loops in terms of decibels? So what are the typical levels that we see? So this is thinking about terms of line and instrument levels. So if you know what those are, there's a few ranges I'll accept here. Mejia and I have already cleared this. First person to get that right is going to win. First person to get that. Sorry, I didn't mean to take that away. Let me add that back in. First person to get this question right wins whatever it is that they want. They send Mejia an email, mejia@vertexeffects.com, and he's going to make sure that you get this sent right to you. It doesn't matter where you live. You could be international. You could be local. You could be a countryman of the United States or woman. We'll send it to you wherever you are. No questions asked. Ezra Elliott. By the way, I recognize his name. I want to give a shout out to Ezra. When this video went live, I was shooting another video, so I didn't really get to the comments until much later. Ezra was in the comments section just regulating, correcting all sorts of misinformation. It's like I didn't even have to do anything. He was telling all people about the impedances. He was telling people about the levels. He was correcting all this misinformation about loops. So shout out to Ezra for being a great resource to people in the comments. I always appreciate that when people are just making sure people get the right information. So thank you, Ezra. Shout out to you. We'll send this out to you. Another giveaway in 8 minutes. Just started the clock. Let's keep going. All right, this one is from Arden. What do you know about the Mesa Boogie effects loop, specifically the Cali Tweed amp? Well, I don't know how that differs from Mesa loops ordinarily, but most of them are very good, and they were listed amongst the ones that I thought were the best from the manufacturers that produce amps with effects loops. So I put them in the same class as guys like John Suhr, Custom Audio Amplifiers, which is also John Suhr, and Robert Bradshaw, or was both of them. I think now it's just Suhr. I would also put that with Paul Rivera, Dave Friedman, George Metropolis. I'm trying to think of who else I put in that list. But Mesa Boogie was among those people. Oh, Fuchs was another one that has a really good loop. All those are great loops, typically. And Mesa was one of the first people to really deal with this. And so I think that those are all pretty good loops. Typically, they have send and return levels, and they have some little compensation dip switches or toggle switches that can adjust the level coming out. So lots of cool stuff that's going on. I definitely recommend that you check out those types of amps if you haven't already. Let's go to another question. Let's see. All right, this is from Ricardo. Ricardo Marcos, the buffer in the Polytune 3 is actually that good? Question mark. Like at the level of the original Bonafide. I believe it is the same as the original Bonafide, is my understanding from TC Electronic. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but this is what they've communicated. So let's hope that they're telling the truth. I think it is. From what I can tell, it seems to be pretty much the same. I haven't experienced anything different. So the answer, as far as we know, are yes. Let's see. This is from Connor Kelly. Quick question: is it possible to connect individual stomp boxes to a multi-effects board new to pedals? Sure. Yeah. You'd either have to put them before the multi-effects or after, or some of the cool multi-effects now, like the Line 6s and some of the other hip ones, they'll have like insert points, or even like the earlier kind of boutique-y ones, like the TC Electronic, what were they, the G systems or the Nova systems. They had like inserts for pedals that you could add in, maybe like 2 or 3 pedals. And so you can use those if you want to like put them, inside of the actual system itself, and maybe have some effects pre and some effects post. But even if it doesn't have that, you can run straight in. You can run, guitar, overdrive pedals, then multi-effects, then amp. You can still do it that way. So either way is cool, Connor. Good question. Brian Mitchell, will an input and output buffer solve the problem or solve the pedal dreaded tone suck? So the volume pedal dreaded tone suck. Okay, got it. Sorry, that was bad reading there on my part. So will it solve it? In most cases, it will. And you can install the buffer inside of the volume pedals, which is cool. Guys like Creation Audio Lab, the same company that we based our DIY buffer kits around, they offer a Ernie Ball volume pedal modification kit, which is basically just taking that buffer and putting it inside of the actual volume pedal itself. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to get the Vertex Boost, which turns any volume pedal into an active volume pedal, and it's also an expression controller for the boost, so you kind of kill 2 birds with one stone. You get a boost and an expression and volume all in one. But you could also take a buffer and put it before it. That could help. But ideally, if you wanted to completely isolate it, you'd have to have a buffer on each side, which is basically what the Vertex Boost does. So it kind of completely eliminates that issue. But yes, it certainly helps, and I would recommend doing it if you are experiencing some tone suck. And yeah, because not every pedal is going to be great at driving them anyway. So if technically any pedal that's on is a buffer, but the output impedance of pedals varies greatly. So some of them could be 100 ohms, some of them could be 10K. It could be all over the place. Next question. I love my Ocean's 11 reverb, but find the tone suck while bypassed is bad, which I assume is a poor quality buffer. Can I use an input-output buffer to help correct for poorly buffered pedals on the board? Well, that must have a true bypass option. Almost everything that they make has a true bypass option. So verify first that it actually is true bypass. An easy way, and this isn't 100% true, but an easy way generally is to just unplug the power from it, and if it still passes signal, it's generally going to be true bypass. Unless it attenuated the signal a bunch and it sounded, funky, which just sometimes happens, or in some of the relay based true bypass, it'll sometimes kill the power. But generally, if it's a mechanical foot switch, it'll still keep it on. So I would say verify that, because sometimes there's like an option for trails, and then when the trails are left on, then it is buffered, because that's the only way that they can taper off, without creating a full bypass to the pedal. Double check that. If you find that it is still tone sucking, I would say try it by itself, because sometimes tone suck can be cumulative and will attribute the problem to one device when it could be like a buildup that's occurring through multiple devices and multiple cable connections and all this stuff. And then we blame one pedal unfairly and single them out, when really it's something that's a downstream consequence that we're seeing, or I should say it's an upstream consequence that we're experiencing further downstream. So I would just say check that first, because it may not be what you think. Let's see. What are your thoughts on the Free the Tone Arc 4 loop switcher? Well, I think that Yuki's stuff is always thoughtful you know, I disagree with him on like some stuff, like solderless cables and some of his techniques of wave soldering and things like that. But I think some of that is just like opinion or matter of taste. It's not necessarily like a right or wrong thing. I think it's probably fine. His stuff is generally really good, and well made, and you know, he's very accountable for the stuff he makes. If there's an issue, he deals with it. He's a cool guy. Every time I'm at a NAMM show, we always talk about pedal boards. So I have a lot of respect for him. I like him a lot. I don't think that enough people know who he is, because you know, he's kind of, you know, cut his teeth in Japan, and so I think most people here don't really know about him unless they're kind of in the scene, so to speak. So I'm sure that it's fine. I'm sure that it's great. I wouldn't try to caution you against it. If you got one or you're thinking about getting one and that fits your needs, I'd say go for it. Yuki's great. All right, giveaway clock is at 0. It's time for another giveaway. This time I'm going to go to my next question, and again, the way that it works, if you're new here, if you've come in the last 8 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a question that deals with what our last video was about, which was about effects loops. We're going to put that on the screen, and the first person to answer it correctly is going to get to win something really cool from D'Addario or TrueTone. Things like the Pro Winder, things like the Light Capo, which is actually really cool. I was using one. I was tracking some guitar stuff. I was using one earlier today. Very cool. We got some 3-packs of NYXLs, 10s and 9s. We also have TrueTone milliamp readers. So if you're building your rig and you want to see what the current draw is of your pedals, you want to make sure it's not exceeding what your power supply can provide. It also has a cable tester on there, which is really handy too if you're building cables. So anyway, you can win one of those things. You're going to email Mejia, the winner. Don't email him if you're not the winner. And give him stuff like your name, phone number, address, things like that for the winner. So I'm going to put it up on the screen, read it to you. First person to answer correctly in the comments wins. The question is, what pedals are the best candidates to use in an effects loop? I will accept somewhat of a range here, but this is kind of commonly. So name 2 types of pedals that are good to use in the effects loop. You don't have to tell me like a model, but like the genre, let's say, of pedals that might work there. So go ahead and name 2 of those. Get that in the comments. First person to name the 2 wins. All right, Ricardo Marcos. Bam. Good work, Ricardo. This could have been things like delays, reverbs. I don't like modulation, but some people do. You could also put an EQ there. You could also put a volume pedal there. You could also put a boost there. I want to go over this, though. I'll restart the giveaway clock again. 8 minutes till our next giveaway, just FYI. So there's a couple of things that the reasons that you could use this stuff in the loop, these other things that I kind of talked about, like the volume, the boost, and the EQ. And I'll explain a few reasons why you might want to use these in there. So a volume pedal, some people do have problems with based on the impedance or the levels of the actual loop. So sometimes people will use a 25K volume pedal like a Ernie Ball Active, which is still passive, but they just called it active because it was made for active pickups. Or they'll use a Boss FE500L or one of those that's for a low impedance signal. And it still won't go completely silent. And this can sometimes happen because there are no standards at loops, and so they're kind of trying to guess. The volume pedal companies are trying to guess to see where things might lie, where it's going to meet the most, people's criteria. So sometimes there can be issues with that. Easy solution is Vertex Boost. Solves that problem. It gives you a boost, first of all, which is great in an effects loop because that's like a real master volume boost. It's like having a boost channel in the amp. And it solves the impedance issue of the volume pedal, creates the buffer there for it, no issues there. But you could also get an active volume pedal that hopefully has a buffer in it that's workable. Now the problem is a lot of buffers can't take line level, and so they will clip or distort. Equally, a lot of boosts can't take it, and they will clip or distort. And we don't want our clean boosts to be distortion generators or EQs. They're really supposed to create more output, and they're supposed to be clean. The pedal themselves are not supposed to be inherently distorted. So I would just be careful. Boosts are great to use. They're just, most of them are not great in the loop because most of them are not designed to be that linear, unfortunately. So they can be cool. You just have to be careful. Volume pedals can be great. You just have to be careful on which one you choose and that you have the right impedance. But the EQ is the really cool one. And a lot of guys, like in the rack days, used to like using like the Soldano X88s. And those had really stellar dirty channels, but the clean channel was very kind of like lackluster, kind of like a little dull. And so guys used to use EQs to kind of like really liven the clean tone. And this is still especially true of channel switching amps that have the same shared EQ on the clean and dirty channel. So it can be really cool to put an EQ in the loop and then have it be MIDI controlled so that when you change over to your clean channel, that you get to kind of re-EQ the amp and you don't have to change the EQs in the front if you have a shared EQ between your two channels. I also used to do this sort of thing when I had a Naylor SD60 and it had a clean channel that was added on it at a later point, actually I think by Dave Friedman. I had bought it like that from Lyle Workman. And it was really good at being able to just enhance that clean tone when I had a shared EQ. So there can be really cool uses of using EQ in the effects loop. And a really cool one that's programmable, that's pretty cool, is the Source Audio. I think is actually really good, even though it's digital. And I know some people, that's also a 4-letter word, but it's pretty good. You know, like I think it's great. I mean, another really cool one that I think is fancy, but people are confused by, is the parametric EQ from Empress, and that can take those types of levels, which is pretty cool. And if you put that in a switcher or something like that, you can do some real cool damage with channel switching amps that are like more old school, that might have had shared EQs. But let's go back to some questions. All right, Lance Cox, what's up, buddy? I just got a second TC Spark booster, the full pedal, okay, not the mini one. I also have a mini boost Spark. Where in my signal would you recommend I place them if I use both? I'd say use the one with the EQs on it first, or as close to the beginning as possible, so you can dial that in a little bit better if it's going to be hitting other pedals to add more saturation. You're going to want that kind of EQing. The one at the end, I think you should just use the smaller one so that it's just about driving more output. It's just about getting a solo boost. It's not going to change the tone, hopefully. It's actually pretty good. For the money, I think it's pretty good. If somebody wanted a Vertex boost and didn't have the dough, I would tell them to get a Spark. That's how good I feel about it. So I would use that one at the end. Santiago Jaramillo Toro. I have a brand new MXR Distortion Plus. Is that a low out? I think is that low the out? I think is it a low output impedance or is it low the output? I don't think it's a low output impedance. I don't remember what it is on those, but a lot of those old MXRs were kind of high, like 10K. I mean, I wouldn't use that as a line drive or anything like that, but that's kind of to be expected with these. You know, you wouldn't buy a Distortion Plus and want it to be a linear line driver for everything. It's kind of, it does its thing, you know. So a chair can't be a couch, you know, or a hammer can't be a drill, unless you got a hammer drill. But I think you get what I mean. Like, we can't expect it to be something that it's not. So I think if you like the sound of it, and those are cool, man. I like the Distortion Plus. So I just say use it as a distortion pedal. This is from Humberto. One question: I have a stereo low impedance volume pedal and a buffered ABY for the end of the chain in a wet-dry configuration. Well, it sounds like you're just doing a split system. It's not really a wet-dry system, but that's me going back to the old man get off my lawn interpretation of wet-dry. So if you're not running stereo, well, I guess you're running an ABY as a splitter, but I guess you're just running. Well, you can't be running stereo out of that. You would just be splitting and have two channels going out of it. So I guess my question is like, you must be splitting it way earlier than the end of the chain if it's actually a real wet, dry, wet, or it's just wet, dry. So I would put the volume pedal before the split, because otherwise it's not going to be any benefit to you to have both of them coming after it, because if you want to affect them both the same, it's not going to matter. I don't think you need to use it in stereo. I would just use it in mono before it goes to the splitter. I don't think there's any reason to do it afterwards, unless you had effects that you needed to mute, like if you're putting distortion effects after the ABY or something like that. If it's all wet effects on one side and all dry effects on the other, and you don't need to insert that later on the chain, I don't think it makes sense to do that. I need to know more about your signal path, I guess, is really what I need to know. Is like, is path A all the distortion devices just straight into 1 amp, and then everything out of B is all your wet effects? If that's the case, where A path is just going straight to the amp and then B path is receiving all the wet stuff, then I just say put the volume pedal before the AB switcher and don't even use it in stereo. No need. Next one. I got all the Kleinulator people in here. Oh, shoot. Did I not start our clock again? Maybe I did. Well, let's just pretend that I did. I'll answer one more question, and then we'll do our next giveaway, and then we'll do the big giveaway, pedalboard giveaway. This one is, let's see. This is from James. What's the best sub-$1,000 clean amp for a pedal platform? Easy. Fender Hot Rod DeVille, Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. Those are the best. The Michael Landau one is my favorite one. It's got a little bit of an upgraded speaker. It's got the Celestion V-types, and it's got a Mercury Magnetics transformer. That, I think, I use that one all the time. It's great. It's been super bulletproof, actually, for me. And I find them for like $600 or so all the time, like on Reverb. I've even found one locally for, I think, $500. So it's a little bit more than the ordinary Hot Rod DeVilles and Deluxes, but it's a little bit better built. It doesn't have the dirty channel. It just has 2 clean channels, and you can just like set one louder, one quieter, whatever you want to do. That's really great. I think it's for clean amps, unbeatable for that price. We're going to do our last giveaway. So again, if you're new to the giveaway scene, I'm going to put a question on the screen. First person to answer it correctly in the comments is going to win a free gift from Diodario and us. So you have a pro string winder. We got capos. We have NYXL 9s and 10s. We have TrueTone milliamp readers. You can get whatever you want. Today it's dealer's choice. You're going to tell Mejia what you want. If you're the winner, first person to answer the question correctly wins one of these things. We ship it directly to you. Doesn't matter if you're here in the United States. Doesn't matter if you're in another country. We do our best, priority shipment and everything like that, so it gets to you as soon as possible. So here we go. Question 5. What are 2 key features of a high-quality effects loop? So these are 2 things. We actually gave, I think, even more than that in the video, but we talked about key things that need to be present in order to make an effects loop a high-quality loop. So what are those things? Go ahead and tell us in the comments, and let's see who that winner is. And then we're going to do the big giveaway, pedalboard giveaway time. Let's see, what are the 2 key features of a high-quality effects loop? Luke Swan. Congratulations to Luke. You won the final giveaway. Make sure that you email all of our winners today. Email Mejia so that he knows that you're the winner. Tell him which one of those things that you want. We'll get those shipped out to you by Monday of next week. Before we announce the pedalboard winner, I want to just let people know that on therigdr.com. We have 20% off all custom cables. These are not only the interconnections on the pedal board, these are also the input cables, the one that go from the guitar into the input, which is the Belden 8412, which is our preferred one that won all of our shootouts. It's also 10% off the clinulator. So if you do want to get a active effects loop box that turns your passive loop into an active loop, 10% off those, in free shipping on all orders over $100. So head over to therigdr.com. That goes through April 11th at 3 p.m. PDT. So be sure to check that out. If you are interested, head over to therigdr.com. Okay. So as I said, we had almost 7,000 entries. So thank you to everybody who participated. What we did is we just used the random number generator from Google, and then whatever number it generated, we just went to that line item on the spreadsheet, and then that person was the winner. And they don't even know that they've won it yet. I don't even know if they're in here, but we're going to go ahead and go to that. So let's figure out who this winner is. So it looks like the pronunciation is Young is our winner. So if you're here, or if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, feel free to identify yourself. I think that Mejia is already reaching out to you now that we've announced the winner on Instagram, and whatever contact info that you put inside of your entry. So congratulations to, I'm assuming he's male, just because like 99.9% of everybody on the channel is a male. We'll do better to try to improve that in 2021. But congratulations to him. We'll get in touch with him, and we'll also document this rig build, whatever he ends up having, and we'll make a video on it. And congratulations to him, and thank you to all the people that participated and that signed up, and for all of our winners today. We really appreciate you being a part of the community, you getting involved, and we appreciate you watching the live stream. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to any of your questions. If I didn't, you're welcome to put those in the comments, and I will. I usually get to as many of those as I possibly can, and it's rare that I don't get to them. So feel free to go ahead and put anything in the comments that you'd like. That it maybe didn't get answered throughout the course of this. I'll get to that. And just wish everybody a fantastic weekend. For our private streamers that are part of the rigdr.com or our Patreon, I'm going to do the stream this weekend. We're not going to do it today because I actually have an appointment that I have to go to right after this. So I'm not able to do it in our normal time today, but we will do it this weekend. So I will send out an email about that so that we can do the stream either on Saturday or Sunday. We'll put a little email out to everybody that's in the private stream. Ordinarily, we would do it right after this stream. We would do the private stream, but I had a conflict today that I couldn't reschedule. So I appreciate the patience of all those people who are on our membership, our paid membership side. And if you're interested in getting a part of the paid membership, we have weekly live streams, Q&As. We do one-on-one coaching and tutorials as well through Zoom and things like that. So if you're interested, you can check that out. But otherwise, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday. And again, congratulations to if he's here. We'll have to figure out where you are in the world, and good. And we'll figure that out with you. We'll get it all shipped out and start the process ASAP. All right, guys. See you later.